Hey friends! Allo oui, bonjour! I just got back from Montreal the other day. You can check out my vlog where I read in French, immersed myself in French for a week if you missed it, to get a bit more of the backstory. But basically, I was traveling to Montreal with my husband to visit with family, and it was so much fun. I'm happy to report that whole past video that I made was an attempt to sort of brush up on my French ahead of this trip. So I'd be ready to interact with family, but also just anyone I might come in contact with during my trip in French. And I'm so happy to say that it went very well. I think I only had to rely on a translation app one time because I needed to buy a lint roller and I couldn't remember what the word for lint was. We did still predominantly interact as a family in English because some of my family members don't speak basically any French at all. But when we were out and about in the city, visiting bookstores, going to restaurants, going to bakeries, using the metro, it was all French all the time. And I was really proud of myself for how easy it was. I definitely had moments where my brain was struggling to keep up with what I was trying to say. And some conversations where as soon as the conversation was over and I walked away, I thought of the perfect thing that I could have said in the moment, whereas I said something, a lot simpler or maybe not quite as accurate to what I wanted to convey as I could have. And then of course, 2 seconds later when I walk away from the interaction, the perfect phrase comes to mind. But I feel like that happens to me in English too. So maybe it's not that big of a deal. Mais oui, je suis très heureuse. It went so well. And of course, I couldn't visit one of my favorite cities in the world and not visit the local bookstores. Now, I didn't manage to go to quite as many as I'd hoped, but really the main point of the trip was to spend time with family. So I did get to go to 2 amazing bookstores and visit a newly refinished library that was absolutely gorgeous. And I still managed to buy 5 books because of course I did. I'm going to go through the 5 books I got, share some footage from our time in Montreal, and then I thought it would be really fun to read the first sentence of each of these, and then to pick a book to read first solely based on that first sentence and which one pulls me in the most. Whichever one draws me in most, whichever one intrigues me the most, that is the one I'm going to read. I will be reading the blurbs of these books and the first sentences in French, since they're written in French, but I'll put a translation on screen. I also want to take a moment to thank this video's sponsor, Babble, because they are a huge reason why I was so prepared for this trip. Not only did I do my sort of week intensive with my Babble lessons, but I did continue to do my Babble lessons for about 10 to 15 minutes a day, all the way up to my trip to Montreal, and that was really helping me keep everything front of mind. I felt very prepared. If you're unfamiliar with Babble, they are one of the top language learning apps in the world. Babble's intuitive lessons help you learn a language through real-life conversations. So in my case, I was specifically trying to brush up on my French in situations I would come across on this trip. So talking with friends and family, like catching up, day-to-day chats, talking with booksellers at bookshops, phrases and vocabulary to do with ordering food, paying for a meal, etc., etc. You get the gist. And Babble really is very well suited to learning a language for these specific real life situations, which is amazing if you're planning on using your language in real life. Babble is scientifically proven to have you speaking a new language in just 3 weeks. And if you, like me, are brushing up on a language you already know, but you've gotten rusty over the years, Babble is really the best choice for you because they have a variety of plans made by real teachers, not AI, that can help you get from where you are to where you want to be. With Babble, you can go from basic phrases like bonjour, comment ça va, merci beaucoup, and au revoir, to more complicated phrases like je ne cherche rien de particulier or je fais juste un tour. Merci, to je ne suis pas spécifiquement à la recherche de quelque chose, mais j'apprécie de nombreux genres de livres tels que les classiques, la fantasy, l'horreur, la fiction littéraire et la non-fiction. Avez-vous des recommandations ou coup de cœur? Babble also offers a 20-day money-back guarantee, so you can give it a try and see if it works for you with no risk. I also really love that Babble has a live class option. Learning in a live class setting is one of the best ways to learn, in my opinion, and when you sign up to Babble, you can get 2 free live classes to see how it works and see if you like that learning environment.
Les enfants savent nager.
Les enfants savent nager. Nous ne savons pas chanter.
Nous ne savons pas chanter.
Nous ne savons pas chanter. Est-ce que vous savez danser?
Est-ce que vous savez danser?
Est-ce que vous savez danser?
Babble has a few different subscription options, so you can find what works for you, including a lifetime subscription, which is really awesome. Since we are approaching the holiday season, I did want to mention that Babble makes an amazing gift, especially for the person who has everything but is a curious lifelong learner. So definitely consider it as a gift. Giving someone the gift of language and communication, especially communication with the people they love, is so incredibly thoughtful, but also really practical and useful, and something that can stick with them for their whole lives. Because Babble is sponsoring this video, you can click the link in my description box to get 60% off your subscription. That's 60% off your Babble subscription with the link in my description box, so click that link and give it a try. And let me know in the comments what language you most want to learn. Okay, so I am so excited to share the 5 books that I bought with you. The first bookstore we visited was Librairie Bertrand sur Rue Saint-Pierre. Books there, so I'm gonna go through these. So the first one I picked up was Galumpf, hopefully that's how you pronounce it, by Hélène Poitras. The author is québécoise, so I'll read the back for you. Un amour né dans le ventre d'une église ou meurtre au bout de toutes les nuits. Une petite fille essaie d'apprivoiser un chien immense pendant que ses voisins veillent au grain. Un homme aime une femme par le truchement d'un cheval. Un animateur de radio est confronté au silence. Des insulaires se débattent entre l'ennui et la rage. Une écrivaine se souvient de ses premiers mots. Dans la langue incisive et poétique qui a fait sa marque, Hélène Poitras interroge la manière dont humains et animaux se donnent et se reprennent les uns aux autres et les compromis nécessaires à la vie ensemble. Un recueil au souffle profond qui rôde à l'intersection des blessures, du désir, de l'égoïsme et de la sollicitude. Le lieu exact et difficile où prend forme l'acte d'empathie. Sort of a series of short stories, Galumpf et autres histoires. But yeah, I just thought that sounded so interesting, and I really loved the cover. I thought it was just a piece of art. How beautiful is this cover? It's amazing. Yeah, sounds fantastic. So very interested in that, and I love that the author is québécoise. So the next one I got was Hexa by Gabrielle Filteau-Chiba. Gabrielle Filteau-Chiba écrit, traduit, illustre et défend la beauté des régions sauvages du Québec. So another author from Quebec, which I love. And this one, again, the cover, I mean, look at the cover. Just look at it. It's so nice. It's such a good cover. So I'll read the back of this one. This one gave me mysterious witchy vibes, which I was very into. So, elle veille, sème, plante, cueille, récoltant coquette, sang et larmes pour que la forêt renaisse, grandisse, nourrie de leur force ainsi que de leur espoir. Si elle courbe l'échine, c'est pour observer la vie de plus près, jamais pour se soumettre aux ordres des puissants. Il faut les voir s'entraider dans l'ombre et le secret, quitte à alimenter les rumeurs les plus folles. On les dit sorcières, on les juge rebelles, elles sont surtout mères. Sounds pretty badass. I'm really into it, so very excited. Then the last one I got at Librairie Bertrand was Les Prophéties de la montagne by Pattie O'Green. And this one, this doesn't say specifically if the author is from Quebec. I will confirm on the screen. I'll Google it while I'm editing. But this one also seemed really interesting. I loved the cover. It kind of gave me Wilder Girls vibes. And then the description was also super interesting. So I will read it to you. Des jeunes filles trouvent une carte des feux sur une montagne urbaine. C'est le point de départ pour l'une d'entre elles qui explora longuement les sentiers de ce milieu naturel afin de trouver des réponses à ces questions sur notre relation au monde, mais aussi à l'amour, à l'art, et à l'amitié. I thought this sounded really intriguing as well, a bit of a coming of age story, and also sort of had a bit of a mysterious quality to it. So super interested in all three of these. I feel like each of these has a bit of a weirdness to them that I like, which honestly, I do feel like at least in my experience, and it is quite limited, but let me know if you agree in the comments, but I do feel like Quebecois literature especially tends to have a bit of an absurdity to it. I mean, French literature in general, again, in my limited experience, seems to have quite a bit of absurdity to it, but there's something about the Quebecois, you know, they really lean into the weirdness of life in a way that I very deeply appreciate as someone who loves weird lit, so all three of these are super appealing to me.
Sure.
Like I mentioned, we did go to one other bookstore. I would have said Le Galion just by reading it, but they have L'Art Galion. But it's a feminist and LGBTQIA+ friendly bookstore down on Rue Baudry. And I really liked this bookstore. It was really fun. They had so many interesting books in there that I would have loved to bring home, but space was limited. We only packed in carry-ons, so I really had to contain myself. So I only picked up 2 books, technically a collection of essays and a play, but I was very tempted. Because they had a really great selection. Not that Librairie Bertrand didn't, because they also had a lot of really interesting books there, but I just really liked specifically the focus on female authors and LGBTQIA+ authors and also authors of color. There was a lot of feminist theory in the bookstore, which was fun, lots of nonfiction. Although I do want to point out that I did only buy books written by women at the other bookstore as well, so it's not like there was a lack of selection. But anyway, the first thing I got at L'Art Galion was Mortel-les. This was on the table right in view when you walk in the door. It was the first table you see. And this cover, I have to admit, drew me in. It looked like something that I would draw as a cover in my bullet journal, which, you know, I have a specific aesthetic and this spoke to me. So I picked it up for that reason, but then it sounded really interesting when I read the back. My understanding is that it's a collection of writings by a variety of authors, sort of collected or edited by Alice Rivard, that is all on the subject of mortality and death and the ways that we think about it, the ways we talk about it, process it, deal with it. And I'm always really fascinated in books that look at this. I think it's really interesting to explore how humans deal with or try to avoid dealing with death. But I'll read the blurb for you, which is actually just a little quote from the editor of the collection. Je voulais que nous écrivions collectivement sur la mort, parce que nous n'en parlons pas assez, et que, lorsque nous le faisons, il y a presque toujours une retenue, une réserve qui nous interrompt dans notre élan, une sorte de convention à respecter pour ne pas trop déranger, une entente symbolique pour la quantité et l'intensité d'émotions et de réflexions déployées. Ce collectif est ainsi né d'un désir de représenter la mort dans sa complexité et évitant les lieux communs en abordant avec ouverture et empathie cette expérience à la fois intime et universelle, malgré nos différences. Un fait incontestable, immuable, nous lie inextricablement dans notre humanité. Nous sommes toutes mortelles. So I thought that sounded really interesting. There's several authors, at least 12 different authors, writing on mortality and death, which I think is really interesting. So that is this one. And then the last book I got is actually a play, and that is Racine, carrée du verbe être by Wajdi Mouawad. And I actually read another play by this author translated into English. In English it was forests, obviously in French it would be forêt, but I read that play when I was at theater school for college, and I actually did a monologue from that play for one of our acting classes. So when I saw Wajdi Mouawad's name and saw actually a couple plays by this playwright in this bookstore, I got really excited, and I haven't read any of their other work, so I looked through all the plays. I think they had 3 different plays by Wajdi Mouawad, and this is the one that drew me in the most. So I decided to grab a play. I do love reading plays, but I'll read the description for you. À partir du postulat, pourquoi vivre ne suffit-il pas à notre bonheur? La mathématique théâtrale de Wajdi Mouawad, somptueuse, tragique, géopoétique et percutante, nous entraîne dans le carrousel à grand tournoiement des vies possibles de Taliani, Wakar, Malik. Neurochirurgien italien, chauffeur de taxi parisien, peintre québécois, condamné à mort texan, boutiquier de jeans, libanais. Chacune de ces incarnations voit son destin perturbé et accéléré au cours de la semaine suivant l'explosion du port de Beyrouth le 4 août 2020, soit 42 ans après l'exil des 4 d'entre eux qui ont fui la guerre civile en 1978. 5 uchronies lestement croisées en un même espace-temps halluciné. So I'm really excited to read this one as well. Like I said, I'm already a fan of this playwright, although it has been now a decade since I've read their work, but I'm very excited about this. So those are the 5 books that I picked up. Like I said, I got a play, I have a collection of nonfiction writings, I have a coming of age story, I have a sort of witchy exploration of womanhood, and I have a collection of short stories to do with humans and animals and their connection. So I am very interested in all 5, but what I'm going to do is read the first sentence of each. So starting with Galumpf, and the first section is called Depuis que les églises ont des trous dans le ventre. Let's read the first sentence. Une de ces nuits de juillet à Montréal, quand les feux d'artifice ont crevé le ciel, saigné la lune, explosé les constellations, et qu'il ne reste plus rien d'autre qu'une étendue bleue qui sent la cendre. Interesting. Really setting the scene. Okay. Then we have Hexa, la femme, accroupie, époigne fermement la pierre à feu, y frotte la lame dentelée 1-2 fois. Okay. Intriguing. I feel like I needed more than a sentence to really get a feel for what was happening there, but that's the rule. So moving on to Les Prophéties de la montagne, and we have the first sentence, which is in the prologue. J'ai découvert pour de vrai la colline au milieu de Montréal à l'adolescence, quand on allait faire le party au tam-tam le dimanche après-midi, mais aussi le samedi soir, quand on s'enfonçait dans le bois pour rejoindre du monde qu'on ne connaissait même pas. Okay, nice. The prologue, sort of remembering back to her adolescence. Intriguing, interesting. I like that. I like stories where someone's telling their own story in retrospect. With a little bit of hindsight, I usually find that framing device interesting if it's done well, so very interesting. Then we have Mortel. This is a collection of different writings, so I'm gonna have to base it off of the first one. So the first little bit, I believe, is just the introduction written by the editor. So this is the first writing, and this is Le Silence Accepté by Mélodie Boujold-Henry, and this is the first sentence. J'ouvre le congélateur 6 fois par jour. That's it. J'ouvre le congélateur 6 fois par jour. That didn't tell me anything, but that's the rule. Okay. All right. And then the first line of the play Racine carrée du verbe être. This one's hard because it's a play, so there isn't really a first sentence, but I will read the very first line, which is very short. Voix de la mère. Taliani. Taliani. Which is just someone's name. So tells me a whole lot. Okay, so from that first sentence, I feel like the ones that I got the least from were these two. I don't really know anything about what's to come from those first sentences or that first line. So probably not going to pick one of those, even though I am still very excited to read them. I am intrigued by the first sentence of all 3 of these quite a bit for different reasons. What do I think? This one, I'm reminding myself of what they were. Oh yeah, this one's really setting the scene in Montreal. This one's about remembering back to her adolescence when she found that little colline. And then Hexa, what was this one again? Oh yeah. This first sentence was pretty short. I feel like I didn't get quite as much of a feeling for what was to come from it. So not sure I'm gonna go with that one. Both of these, I feel like, made a good impression on me with that first sentence, sort of set expectations a bit, set the scene a little bit. But I think from the first sentence alone, this is the one that's really calling to me, Les Prophéties de la montagne. I just really like the way that we have an older protagonist looking back on her teenage years and this event or this discovery that presumably changed her life. And I'm really intrigued by that. So I think I'm going to read this one to conclude this little, I don't even know what to call it. I guess it's a haul from my trip to Montreal, little tiny bit of a vlog. So I'm gonna go off and get started. I'm pretty excited. Because Babble is sponsoring this video, you can click the link in my description box to get 60% off your subscription. That's 60% off your Babble subscription with the link in my description box, so click that link and give it a try.